Please. Hi, welcome to Out Dance Project. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Elliot, and we are the lead artists of this project, which really what that means is that we got really creative about how to make new friends during COVID.
We're so grateful that you're joining us tonight to witness this collection of rural LGBTQ+ stories and dances from across Oregon. Below this window, you'll find a chat. And if you haven't already, introduce yourself by typing your name and let us know where you're joining from.
We recommend you view the show in full screen, and you can set that up by clicking the icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your viewing window that appears as 4 arrows pointing outwards. Please note that when you are in full screen mode, you will not see the chat. Next to that icon, the series of lines increasing size is your volume control. And the little gear icon next to that will offer you the opportunity to change the resolution at which you're viewing the show. We recommend a lower resolution for lower internet speeds to avoid glitching.
This evening's show is ASL interpreted by Rory. Thank you, Rory. And live captioned. The live captions are just below the screen also. And if you would like to pop out the live captions into a separate window, you can do so by using the chat that we will, or the link that we will drop into the chat. So before the show begins, we want to take a minute to acknowledge the material resources that make our gathering possible. And since our activities are shared digitally, let's take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within technological structures, including the equipment and high-speed internet, which are not available in many Indigenous communities and communities in rural Oregon. Even technologies that are central to much of the art that we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous peoples worldwide. We acknowledge that settler colonizers and slavers from Europe used stolen land and enforced labor of African and Chinese people to subsequently develop the land. We honor the lives of all who endured and continue to endure in the face of settler colonialism. We are on the land of Talawa Dene Nation and Takelma peoples, and these people are still here. Many Takelma and Talawa people were forcibly displaced to the Coast Indian Reservation, today the Siletz Reservation, on the north coast of Oregon, where they still live today.
Although we're meeting in digital space, we are also grounding this performance in a place. Welcome to the Wallowa County Show. Proceeds from tonight's show will benefit Safe Harbors. And I want to welcome Marika and Kelly to speak about their work and ground us in Wallowa County. We will be dropping the link to donate in the chat throughout the night. Kelly?
Welcome to everyone who's with us tonight. I would ask that all of us present consider whose traditional homeland we reside on. I'm sharing my story from the Wallowa Valley, land which was never ceded by the Joseph and Wallowa bands of the Nez Perce, and land which is the traditional territory of the Nez Perce, Cayuse, Walla Walla, and Umatilla nations. As non-native people, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves about the ways in which nation-to-nation treaties were broken by a government of which I am a citizen. Land back is not a metaphor. In the Nez Perce language, there is a word which is an expression of apology or distress spoken to a meadowlark who wants to then up to the lark's legs. Up on the prairie and in the meadows, meadowlarks have begun to build their nests on the ground as spring arrives here. Nez Perce and this land, its mountains, rivers, and canyons, and all the life they contain are inseparable from each other. Please carry this truth in your heart during tonight's performances.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Marika Straw, and I am the LGBTQ+ advocate here at Safe Harbors in Wallowa County. Safe Harbors is an advocacy organization serving survivors of sexual domestic violence and intimate partner violence. And you might be wondering, What that has to do with LGBTQ folks? Well, we had some amazing advocates and staff a few years back who were realizing that sexual and domestic violence disproportionately affects those who are not cisgender or heterosexual. And so they said, you know, we need to serve this population better. We need to be serving queer people better here in Wallowa County and at Safe Harbors. And so out of that was born the LGBTQ advocate position, as well as our queer youth program, our LGBTQ community council, which plans what I hear is a fantastic and beloved Pride Festival, not Pride Festival, but Pride celebration, as well as a resource list for our LGBTQ citizens, an allies list of allies in the community, and a Facebook and Instagram post pages dedicated specifically to LGBTQ folks here in Wallowa County. And I'd also just like to do a special shout out to Stephanie Cedarbrook and Curie Weaver, who were the LGBTQ advocates here at Safe Harbors before me and have done so much to build this work and to build community here into a thriving and beautiful LGBTQ community here in Wallowa County.
Thank you, Marika. And those resources that Marika mentioned will be on a slide we'll share at the end, and it'll be a PDF you can pick up in the chat and download. So before we start, we also want to express gratitude for the bravery, eloquence, patience, and courage of all the artists involved in this production, the storytellers, the performers, the choreographers, the broadcast artists. And this project would not be possible without our funding partners, who are All Care Health, the Miller Foundation, Josephine County Cultural Coalition, and the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide. We honor and lift up their work.
So the show will begin in just a moment. While we are in digital space together, we invite you to please also remember your body during the performance. This performance is a lot about bodies, about movement and connection. So I invite you to join me in taking a breath. And maybe just stretching a little, stretching your shoulders, or however you want to do it. You can just do it. Feeling feeling the chair underneath you and your feet on the ground, or however your body is in contact with the world around you. Just grounding yourself as you prepare to take in this work.
And now the show. Just kidding. It's not just us. Take it away, Olivia.
Silver Age. I want to dedicate this reading to my dear friend, Tangren Alexander, philosopher, writer, lesbian pioneer at the center of the women's community in Southern Oregon. She's leaving this earthly life to spend her time among the stars. May you soar free, Tangren. What's it like to reach a time in life where you look to the future and understand that yours might be a solitary one, that the time of love and romance is over? At 55 years of age, I understood this. At the time, I was living in a one-room cabin deep in the woods. Ancient trees swept the sky, and a large meadow provided scurrying animals, cover from the night owls who flew over. Having walked the roads of this earth for 5.5 decades, I didn't feel too young or too old. I felt just right. I loved my life. I looked forward to planting seeds in the rich spring soil. I gathered luscious bouquets of flowers from the garden to bring beauty to my home in summer's heat. And bowing to autumn's demands, I gathered wood and turned the fruits of summer into winter stores. In this way, I marked the seasons, which gave my life meaning. When the days grew shorter and the snow began to fall, I would sit contented in front of my fire, knowing I had everything I needed: food, shelter, and warmth. But there were those nights when the dark came early and the hours grew long that I had to admit to myself I was lonely. For all the books and DVDs and music I owned, for all the friends I could call and visits to the city an hour away, where I got my cultural fix, they were no replacement for that special someone, for touch that brought on the heat of desire, for the taste of a kiss, and the sensation of warming my belly against a lover's back as I slept. I didn't want to kid myself. I had lived through the pain of my heart breaking into pieces as I watched a beloved walk away. More than once. The years had sanded down the edges of those past hurts, but was I ready to try again? You can have all the fantasies you want, I scolded myself, but where are you going to find this next Ms. Wonderful sequestered in these woods? Still, it was fun to dream, and often I'd catch myself imagining someone coming up the path, stepping through the door, wearing a smile that would make my heart flutter. But the reality was that most of the women in the area were already coupled or close friends who I cared for, had fun with, and leaned on for support, but who didn't fit into the category of a possible new love. I reminded myself that I could continue to have a fulfilling life as a single woman. I pushed away my yearning and looked towards spring. And then I saw her standing there. We had both come to a party given by a mutual friend. I drifted into the kitchen to see what was cooking. She stood talking to someone I knew. She wasn't a stranger, far from it. I had known her for over 25 years, both of us being part of the larger lesbian land community that stretches from Ashland to Portland. She lived far to the south and had been perennially coupled. But recent gossip had it that for the first time in a long time, she wasn't with anyone. She was a small, strong, attractive butch. And as I listened to the conversation, I learned that she was really funny. I stood to the side for a few more minutes when a sudden realization brought me up short. She's single, my mind proclaimed. Like being pierced with Cupid's proverbial arrow, a rush of feeling almost knocked me over. My face flushed, and I felt embarrassed, scared that she might have read my mind. I couldn't think of a thing to say, but in that moment, I was smitten. It was a wild romance. Emails started flying back and forth, subtle flirtations, and then not so subtle, written late at night. Daily phone calls followed. The heat between us made us want to spend as much time together as possible. And so we took turns driving the freeway to breach the physical distance between our homes. It made for a lot of driving. That's when the songs appeared. She gifted me with a playlist of her favorites, and the lyrics seemed to match perfectly the story unfolding between us. It became a soundtrack to our burgeoning love story. One night, my desire to be with her was so overwhelming that I jumped in the car at midnight. Lucinda Williams accompanied me, singing. I drove my car in the middle of the night. I just wanted to see you so bad. The road was dark, but the stars were bright. I just wanted to see you so bad. I climbed mountains and plummeted through canyons to appear unannounced on her doorstep. I just wanted to see you so bad. Her favorite song, Katie Tunstall's Suddenly I See, made me giddy at the thought that she might perceive me in such a way. You can see she's a beautiful girl. She's a beautiful girl. And everything about her is a silver pool of light. But the song that told the fullest story, which reflected most accurately how we each felt, was The Kiss That Counted by Katie Curtis. Both of us were scared, having been hurt by love before. I shut my windows and my eyes. I put on my headphones and I stayed inside. But all these love songs pouring through my veins carried you to me. The first night we slept together, after waiting what seemed like months, she turned to me and said, "We just changed the course of our lives." There was no turning back. I tried to warn you that this would be the kiss that counted, the one that mattered, my life before me undone. My life was being undone. Living apart was not a long-term option, as neither of us wanted to spend our days and nights apart, yearning for one another. So I made the decision to say goodbye to my house in the woods and make a new life on the top of a mountain with her. This would be the kiss that counted, the one that shattered my defenses, bringing me emotion and devotion, which it has and which it will for many years to come.
I saw it coming like summer rain, incoming ocean, oncoming train. I veered in circles to get off your path. I tried to warn you this would be the kiss that counted, the one that mattered, my life before me undone. This would be the kiss that counted, the one that shattered my defenses, bringing me emotion
I'm Mizu, reading the story of Bridget Extraordinaire. The greatest gift my dad ever gave me was an appreciation for music. Growing up, I learned that to truly appreciate music, you must first turn out all the lights, light a candle or two, and turn the speakers up to a level which will vibrate your insides, but not blow the heads. I later learned that my dad's secret ingredient to this equation was a little weed, just to get the vibes right. After you set the scene, you get yourself comfortable, open your heart vessel, and sing along with conviction. My dad would do this for hours, and if his buddies came to visit, they would do it for days. These visits are where I learned Music Appreciation 2.0, the grand art of the playlist, the how and why one establishes which song should be played after the other. These are not decisions to be made lightly. My dad didn't have a particularly eclectic or refined taste in music, though he would never catch me saying that. But he was very invested in his preferences. Most of what he liked could be found on the Classics radio station, which now would be the oldies station. Bands like Steely Dan, Paul Simon, and James Taylor. But if I asked, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what 5 albums would you want to have? Which was a popular question in my house. His number one answer would be Madman Across the Water by Elton John. My dad adored Elton John. Not only did he sing along at the top of his lungs, he would also play a very enthusiastic air piano. He saw him in concert many times. I once painted a portrait of Elton for a school art project as a gift for my dad, and it got framed and hung near the stereo. We never talked about the fact that Elton is gay, ever. It's not that my dad was a vocal homophobe. We just had a very typical Midwestern don't ask, don't tell policy in our house. My dad's only sister, who brought the same roommate to every small family gathering for years. Well, if we didn't say the word out loud, she could never be a lesbian. So you could probably guess that I never came out to my dad. We had enough challenges between us that I didn't feel we needed to wedge that one in there too. A few years ago, at the encouragement of some friends, I DJ'd a little queer house party. It was super fun and went really well, so I did it a couple more times. And then we started having regular public gay dance parties in Grants Pass, and I was asked to DJ some of them, and eventually found that I was the primary queer DJ in Southern Oregon. And it was super fun, and I was really good at it. I told my dad what I was up to, leaving the word queer out, of course, and he didn't quite get it. What's a dance party? Well, Dad, it's kind of like what you do with your buddies, but in a bar with dance music and for a whole lot more people. 2 years ago, we found out my dad had liver cancer, and 2 weeks later, he died. In days leading up to his death, his buddies came to visit the hospital, and there was so much music. The times that I was alone with him, I would play albums that had a connection specific to us, like the album that was notorious for getting me to sleep as a baby, or the one he played nonstop on that one road trip, and of course, all his favorite Elton John albums, and I would sing. The following summer, I was offered a dance hall gig the night before Father's Day. I felt conflicted about whether or not to commit, unsure of what my emotional state might be. But a little reflection revealed that it was probably just the right thing to be doing. So I went to work crafting a playlist. And there were several subtle nods to my dad in my set, but I really wanted to bring Elton to the floor. Eventually, I found a killer remix of Rocket Man. And what better song to bring to the rural queers? It's all about alienation and loneliness. I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. And the remix brought it to a disco beat. Perfect. So the gig came and I was kind of tore up, but I put on a cute look and applied my femme armor and did my thing. As the night neared its close, I finally found my Elton moment. And as soon as the song started, I felt the hot, wet tracks sliding down my face. I had to duck behind the table because the tears had grown into sobs, and I needed the whole 8 minutes of that song to put myself back together. And I needed a moment of privacy to be wholly in that moment. My whole gay ass self on a full gay ass dance floor with my dad and gay ass Elton John. It's both tragic and beautiful how many of these moments are possible now that he's gone. We may not get the kind of care and support we want from our families while they are alive, but once they are ancestors, we get to choose what kind of relationship they get to have with us. And this is the best relationship my dad and I have ever had. Postscript. Today is the deadline for submissions for the Outdance project, and when I woke up this morning, I was still on the fence of whether or not I would have the time to get this down today. The truth is I've been avoiding it because it wasn't an easy story to write, and I cried a lot typing it out. But I knew it wanted to come through. And this morning, just after I decided I probably wouldn't have time, I picked up my phone and opened Instagram, and there in Dave Navarro's stories was a pic of him in a cloak he just bought from me with Rocket Man playing in the background. Thanks, Dad. Message received.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight. 0 hour, 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high as a kite by then. I miss the earth so much, I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a timeless flight. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh no, 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 I'm a rocket man, burning out his fuse out
I'll never forget that concert. It was June of 2018, Pride Month, and the year my favorite artist of all time, Janelle Monáe, released her Dirty Computer album and came out as pansexual. I still have the issue of Rolling Stones with that interview and her incredible presence on the cover. This album and its accompanying video features so many powerful images of queer, Black love and joy and togetherness in a way that's not often shown. It's one of the first few times I, a queer, Black, non-binary femme, truly felt seen. So when she announced that Portland was a stop on her tour, I snatched up tickets immediately. I'd been living in Portland for 2 years at the time, newly out and still struggling to find community in a city that touts progressive ideology, but often falls short of demonstrative support of QT BIPOC people. But I knew that finding others in the QT BIPOC community would not be a problem at a Janelle Monáe concert. And I wanted to make sure that my fellow Black and queer fandroids were front and center to celebrate our queen. The show was outdoors and first come, first served seating at the Edgefield Hotel. I had to be the first in line, so I booked my room the night before and marched out to the start of the line at 5 a.m. I blasted on social media my Prime Q status and shared that any Black or QT BIPOC people who saw me could leave their blankets with me, and I would save a spot for them at the front of the venue once the doors opened. My friends and I ended up with a few dozen blankets to lay out and cultivate an unofficial QT BIPOC space. Now, I know some people may not consider this fair, but I consider it reparations. Black and brown queer people spend so much time being overlooked, underestimated, and marginalized. This was our chance to take up some real space and celebrate an artist who is unapologetically Black and queer. The concert was incredible. We never stopped dancing. I sang along with almost every song. People everywhere were jumping and screaming and smiling and singing with pride flags waving. I felt at home. As the concert came to a close, there was still one more song from her album that Janelle Monáe had yet to perform. It's the final song on the album titled Americans. It's a poppy, upbeat jam that embodies the spirit of a patriotic ode, contrasted with lyrics that outline the patriarchal imbalances of this country. 79 cents to your dollar, all that bullshit from white collars. You see my color before my vision. Sometimes I wonder if you will fly, would it help you make a better decision? The opening choral lines began as Janelle Monáe confirmed this to be her final song of the night. I scooted up as close to the stage as possible with a bisexual pride flag in my hand, simply enjoying the song and wishing the concert to go on forever. I was absolutely shocked when my idol came over and took the flag out of my hand and waved it on stage during her final performance. It was one of the most memorable moments of my life. Picture it. I grew up in Grants Pass, a town littered with empty patriotism where you're more likely to see a Blue Lives Matter flag than a pride flag. I rarely saw other people who looked like me and was often told, both explicitly and through implicit pressures, that it wasn't okay to be who I was. I've never truly felt safe in my hometown. So to see a queer Black artist wave a symbol of love and openness while singing about being an American was overwhelmingly inspiring in a way that I can't fully put into words, especially in a space where I was surrounded by more melanated queer people than I had ever been around in my life. I've since moved back to my hometown, and while so much has changed in my life and in the world, that song remains a source of pride and joy and power for me. And it continues to inspire me in my fight for justice in my community and in this country. It evokes a world where one day the concept of patriotism in this country might not be tied so greatly to hate and exclusion. It takes me to a place of hope, even when I'm at my most cynical. Since being back in Grants Pass and out and proud, I have found that its powerful message, enveloped in surface level patriotism, has also provided an ironic protection when I played in my car with the windows down. It's one of the few times I actually feel safe in my hometown, as it reminds me that it is okay to be who I am and to unapologetically take up as much space as I'd like.
Fairy tales usually start with once upon a time, and this is certainly a fairy tale, but I'd like to call it something different, the beginning of remembering. I guess we have to go all the way back to the beginning, to when I was born. When I was born, I was named Doña Desiree Ana Maria Gutierrez Escalante de Cas. Wow, that's a lot of name for a kid. You can call me Lycan now, but that's what I was born with. I was born to 2 proud parents, immigrant parents. I'm first generation born in this country. I also grew up in a Latino barrio. And Latino barrios are amazing places. Lots of family, lots of music, lots of food. But there's also a lot of other things in the barrios that don't exist in other places. Sure, there's a lot of different places that are unsafe, but in the barrios, it can be scary, especially if you're not from there. But I was from there, so it was okay, I guess. I lived with iron bars on my doors and windows, car alarms, gang violence, drive-by shootings, you name it. It was a violent place to grow up as a kid, but I didn't know anything different. It's not the life that I live now here in rural Southern Oregon. The violence was as common as the leaves falling from the trees in the fall here, or the rain falling on your roof so gently. You just lived with it. It was normal. But at some point, I didn't want to live that life anymore. And I also knew as I grew up and got older that I was going to school that there was white kids, and I wanted to be them. I wanted to be the Britneys and the Kellys and the Megans. I didn't want to be who I was. So I got out and I left, and I got as far away from that place as I could. And I came to Oregon. I lived in Portland for a while, but it still wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted freedom. I wanted to hear the rain like I'd never heard it before when I lived in the city, in the barrio. I wanted to breathe the fresh air and look at the stars like I never did in the city of the barrio. So I moved out here to rural Southern Oregon, and at some point, I got discouraged. I was like, I'm alone, because I started to notice that I was the only one. And also being two-spirit, a lot of people can identify with that. Sometimes you feel like you're the only one, and it's a secret that you had to hide. And that's definitely how I felt when I was living out here in rural Southern Oregon. My heritage, my culture, my language, my native tongue was not something that you talked about, especially not out here, especially in prominently white communities, and even in the LGBT community. And then one day, that all changed, and it all changed for the better. And I guess there was a plan to this journey into this fairy tale. I met this amazing, smart, beautiful, charismatic creature. She's now my partner, but we'll get to that in a minute. In the beginning, we were just friends. Actually, we were just acquaintances. We would see each other maybe at like house parties, get-togethers, garden parties, barbecues. And one day she hit me up and asked me to play her a Latin playlist for her birthday party. And I was like, are you sure that's going to be okay? And people aren't going to get offended if we play this kind of music? She was like, I don't care. It's my birthday. I want to hear this kind of music, and I know you got it. Well, little did she know, I had tried to so far remove myself from my culture, my heritage, my people. I didn't. So I had to dig hard that day for her birthday. But I did it, and I made an amazing playlist. And on that playlist was a song called Despacito. If you don't know what the word Despacito means, it means to go slow. Fast forwarding, time goes by, and this acquaintance now becomes a good friend. We spend a lot of time together, talking, hanging out, just doing the things that friends do, going to lunch, going to events, going to the movies. We spent more time together. We went out, did friend things. But then something happened. We began to talk. It was almost like our secret club between her and I. We were able to talk about what it was like to be firstborn in this country. We began to talk about what it was like to have another language. And we began to speak to each other in our native tongues. We began to talk about our parents, the similarities. Her being Cubana, my family being from Mexico, her being Taino, me being Aztec. And it was so different. And it was almost like our little secret that we kept from the rest of the world. And it was our connection and the dancing and the music and the food and the colors and our clothes all of a sudden didn't matter anymore. And it was like I found the best parts of the video right here in rural Southern Oregon in a little cabin in the woods with a Cuban girl. And I didn't know what to do, thinking I almost left this place out of fear. And I'm glad I didn't leave, because I found myself, my culture, my heritage, and who I am. We found each other together. And now we live together still here in the woods in rural Southern Oregon, in a little cabin in the woods, listening to the rain and the leaves, and celebrating who we are and taking the best parts of the video and spreading it through this place and sharing it with others. And it's magical. And the thing was about going slow, about taking your time, not changing who you are, about celebrating your differences. Now I know that it's okay to be who I am. I am Doña Desiree Ana Maria Gutierrez Escalante de Cas. I am Aztec. I am Mexicano. I am who I am. And it's wonderful to live in this little tiny cabin in this woods in rural Southern Oregon with my beautiful Taino Cuban partner, living the life that we were always meant to live, peacefully.
Ay. Fonsi. Chihuahua. Oh, oh no, oh no. Oh. Hey. Go. Sí, sabes que ya llevo un rato mirándote. Tengo que bailar contigo hoy. Chihuahua. Vi que tu mirada ya estaba llamándome. Muéstrame el camino que yo voy. Oh, tú eres el imán y yo soy el metal. Me voy acercando y voy armando el plan. Solo con pensarlo se acelera el pulso. Oh yeah, ya me está gustando más de lo normal. Todos mis sentidos van pidiendo más. Esto hay que tomarlo sin ningún apuro. Despacito, quiero respirar tu cuello despacito. Deja que te diga cosas al oído, para que te acuerdes si no estás conmigo. Despacito, quiero desnudarte a besos despacito. Firma las paredes de tu laberinto y hacer de tu cuerpo todo un manuscrito. Sube, 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 sube. Quiero ver bailar tu pelo, quiero ser tu ritmo. Que le enseñes a mi boca tus lugares favoritos. Favorito, favorito, baby. Déjame sobrepasar tus zonas de peligro hasta provocar tus gritos y que olvides tu apellido. Si te pido un beso, vendámelo. Yo sé que estás pensándolo. Llevo tiempo intentándolo. Mami, estoy dando y dándolo. Sabes que tu corazón conmigo te hace bam bam. Sabes que esa beba está buscando de mi bam bam. Me pruebas de mi boca para ver cómo te sabe. Quiero ver cuánto amor a ti te cabe. Yo no tengo prisa, yo me quiero dar el viaje. Empezamos lento, después salvaje. Pasito a pasito, suave, suavecito. Nos vamos pegando poquito a poquito. Cuando tú me besas con esa destreza, veo que eres malicia con delicadeza. Pasito a pasito, suave, suavecito. Nos vamos pegando poquito a poquito. Y es que esa belleza es un rompecabezas, pero para montarlo aquí tengo la pieza. Despacito, quiero respirar tu cuello despacito. Deja que te diga cosas al oído, para que te acuerdes si no estás conmigo. Despacito, quiero desnudarte a besos despacito. hacerlo en una playa en Puerto Rico, hasta que las olas griten ay bendito, para que mi sello se quede contigo. Pasito a pasito, suave suavecito, nos vamos pegando poquito a poquito. Enseñas a mi boca tus lugares favoritos. Favorito, pasito a pasito, suave suavecito, nos vamos pegando poquito a poquito. Hasta provocar tus gritos y que olvides tu apellido. Despacito.
I arrived in Lostine, Oregon, population 304, with the dorsal spine of a rockfish embedded deep in my heel, riding a wave of exhilarating and bone-deep exhaustion that came of working 7 days a week all summer, unloading fishing boats. My workdays began and ended under the stars, alongside a crew of men who had never before hired a woman to do what they considered men's work. I think I got the job because I challenged them all to arm wrestling contests, and nobody was brave enough to try and best me. I was proud of my body at the end of that season, and wistful for the days on the docks, beside the bayfront, with the gulls and seabirds crying and wheeling overhead, the sea lions barking from their jetties of rock. I might have stayed on the coast forever, ferrying Chinook salmon, coho salmon, bluefin tuna, Pacific mackerel, black cod, lingcod, hake, rockfish, and skates from the ocean onto the concrete slab of the fish plant, like a boatman on the river Styx. But I was offered a gig in Eastern Oregon that I couldn't turn down. Eventually, the spine would be extracted from my heel by the local doctor of Wallowa County, who still made house calls and often accepted a gin and tonic or two as payment for his cures. So come October of 2014, I learned to drive a stick shift in my newly purchased $500 Kia Rio while traveling as far north and east as a person can travel and still be in Oregon, to begin an apprenticeship with a woodcarver. He builds, as he calls them, unlikely objects, such as walrus busts for mounting on the dining room wall, rearing mermaid horses, racing carrot boxcars, seesaws with pigs for seats, and small, elaborately carved carts, which can be pulled by any miniature pony who is willing. The previous spring, he and his wife purchased a dilapidated turn of the 20th century farmhouse, which required massive renovations. They put out the call for help, so I became the woodcarver's apprentice, and herein begins a story which I am coming to love to tell. I learned from the commercial beekeepers who deliver several thousand hives to this place every April that Wallowa County is known as the High Country. The valley floor is lent an air of being tucked away by the Wallowa Mountains, ancient islands who take on a mantle of snow during the long winter months. Out of these mountains and into the lush river bottoms of the valley flow the Wallowa, Lostine, and Minam rivers, as well as innumerable important creeks. Salmon still run all the way from the ocean to the headwaters of the Lostine to spawn where they were born. The Blues to the east are an older range, eroded by millennia. They usher the weather into this county. Sometimes, Deadman's and Tollgate Pass, the two routes leading out to the greater world, will close for a time if road conditions are too dangerous, and all of us who live here become truly remote. To the east are vast canyonlands laid over by layer upon layer of basalt flows, which have since been carved by the Snake River into the deepest gorge on the continent. To the north is the bleak but stunning bunchgrass prairie, where elk herds and wolf packs keep each other occupied. Snowy owls, tundra swans, and gyrfalcons take respite from the Arctic winter on this prairie. The land is littered with the ghosts of old farmhouses up there, from which children would ride horseback to school. There are places, too, where the dugout floors of summertime pit houses, constructed by bands of the Nez Perce tribe, can still be seen carved out of the earth. June is the time for wildflowers, when the colors bring the wild bees into a state of frenzy for nectar and pollen. By November, the woodcarver's daughter, who from here on out we will call the mysterious bookbinder, had arrived to help with the house as well. She is a person with the thickest, longest, hennaed braid I have ever seen, who often makes barely decipherable pronouncements under her breath, which are, at the same time, some of the most eloquent I have ever heard. She was raised up in an old cheese factory, where her father was carving a carousel at the time, and later on a trout farm up the Lostine River. Once, as a baby, she traveled to a hunting camp in the mountains, wrapped in a cradleboard, where her mother was working as the cook. She bathed in bear fat and used to believe every TV show was a cooking show. Her companion is a small golden rabbit. Despite having been relegated to what would become the second-floor bathroom upon her arrival, she turned the space into a nest of silks, comforters, old books, and steaming mugs of tea. Once, at the end of October, I asked her why the cows had been mooing night after night, and she explained that the calves were weaned from their mothers at this time of year. I was beginning to learn the rhythms of this rural land and its inhabitants. Some nights we'd walk down the gravel road to the neighbors for parties or potlucks, and I have never seen so many stars. That first year, I thought I would be learning all sorts of woodworking skills. To begin with, though, we mostly smashed things up and ripped them apart, tearing out lath and plaster walls, ceilings, bathrooms, kitchens, and old narrow hallways. In the joist bays of the morning parlor were 2 pack rat nests, one full of desiccated vegetables, and the other stuffed with old newspaper clippings that had probably been stolen by the rat from a child's bedroom. One clipping was a carefully cut out print of a rhinoceros, rendered by an artist who clearly had never seen a rhinoceros in their life. Another task I volunteered for that is particularly worth mentioning is the week I spent attempting to extract bat urine stalactites from the rafters of the attic, where a maternal nesting colony of little brown bats had resided for decades before being evicted by these new, unaccommodating landlords. I finally gave up when even a hand axe would not break some of the hardest crystallized pea adhered to the centenarian boards. After a day wearing hazmat suits to shimmy under the house and install heating ducts while avoiding the skunk nest under the porch, we all took long soaks in the clawfoot tubs and got spiffed up for the square dance in town. I remember donning a thrift store treasure, this handmade, green as grass stunner of a skirt with a choo-choo train embroidered around the hem, appliqued mice drifting in the air above, and a water tower for a pocket. I imagine that whoever sewed it was a 6.5-foot tall preschool art teacher. Since the very beginning, since I was a shirtless kid in pink cotton shorts and sandals, planting tomatoes and cucumbers with my dad in the springtime, I have been confused by gender. And since I began to understand that we all get assignments at birth, I have attempted to undermine the one I got. I remember being mistaken for a boy for the first time by an old man in a trucker hat at the registration table of a local fishing derby. He said, "What's your name, young man?" And after the briefest moment of indignation, my body was flooded with a euphoric relief. He had recognized me. Wearing that long skirt hiked halfway up my abdomen was a new thread being woven into my own narrative. The truth is, I am both. I am masculine, and I am feminine in equal measure. Before leaving, the woodcarver suggested we let off some steam from the long, dusty day by shooting the broken toilet we had removed and tossed in the yard. We took turns with the rifle, and I hit it right in the bowl so that it tipped over at a comically slow speed and fell to the ground. I posed beside it in my long green skirt for a photo, the way gross macho hunters will pose beside animals they have killed. It felt good to tease these unadmirable men, having recognized in myself that I hope to do better, be kinder, and be gentler than them. Now, 6 years on since the evening I practiced using a rifle by taking target practice at a toilet, my relationship to my queer identity has grown inextricably create the story of this place where I live. This week, my friend, the rock enthusiast, and my collaborator in art and poetry hiked with me down into the bottom of the Snake River Canyon. We slept on a bluff of basalt beside a hackberry tree while the river muscled past us all night long. We cupped our hands around our mouths and yelped into the night. Our cries echoed off the canyon walls, and the wind took our laughter out over the water. We hiked out of this ancient magma chamber in the morning as clouds scudded fast across the sky and slanting light made the ridges glow as shadows moved across the greening slopes. We drove back out through layer upon layer of lava flow. Upon returning to the valley, I picked up my testosterone prescription from the pharmacy, and my friend sat beside me, taking some portraits, as I measured my dose and injected it into my thigh. In just a few weeks, another dear friend, who we will affectionately and with the deepest admiration refer to as the conscientious taxidermist, will return from their winter sojourn in Los Angeles. We will walk through the town in the sunshine, swinging our arms, being queer together, and laughing loud. My understanding of community has changed to its very foundation through my relationship with this place. Time stretches ahead in beauty, containing all that remains to learn. For now I know that willow trees blush in the springtime before they bloom. There are over 100 species of wild bees who live on the prairie. What a kingfisher sounds like when they are scolding. How to build a rock jack. How to chop firewood. How to hold a baby calf while she gets her immunizations. How to feel an exquisite loneliness in the context of my solitude. How to gallop on a horse that bucks. That one must close every gate they open. The 2 cow elk in the middle of the winter, standing 50 yards away, is surely one of the most incredible sights I will be lucky enough to see in my whole life. How to put chains on my truck, how to build a staircase, how perfect it feels to sip on a lavender-flavored seltzer water from the general store while riding home on my bike after a spring thunderstorm. And perhaps, as important as anything else, I am beginning to learn how to welcome the most uncomfortable of my emotions into the kitchen farmhouse of my heart and offer them a cool drink, a homemade pretzel, or whatever it is they need. I am also learning how to feel easy with my soul again, to trust what it loves and allow its intermittent euphorias to ease my intermittent pains. Like a western meadowlark using its song to break through the long frozen winter into the first moment of spring.
Way up in the Northland, in the sweet, cold, and green, turns the mill in those roving blue hills where 3 rivers do meet. Hand in hand we went waltzing through those old lonely streets. In my soul I always will hold those nights so dear to me. So lay back your head, forget all your pain. The nightingale croons to the west and breaks free from her chains. Fare thee well to November, Double door with next year at your door when the slate is broken clean. I found peace through the darkness. It's so cold that it burns. Northern lights are dancing tonight to a tune I've never heard. So lay back your head, forget all your pain. The nightingale croons to the west and breaks free from her chains.
Yay!
Yay! That's our show. Please join us in a round of applause.
Yay! I know it's awkward to applaud at home, but we invite you to applaud. To all the story readers, thank you so much for your beautiful readings, your bravery and eloquence, and for sharing your stories with us. Thank you.
And to the dancers.
Yes.
And the choreographers. Thank you for your visionary work and movement.
Yes. And to our tech team and production team, this show is being supported by an incredible group of video broadcasting artists. We could not have done it without your brilliance. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, Rory and Zach, for interpreting and providing captioning. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We have just a few words to close out the show while the credits play.
Yay! So if you feel inspired to share a story with us after seeing today's show, please visit our website, that's beyondboomandbust.com, where you will find a portal to submit your story, and we'll drop the link to our website in the chat. Stories and videos from tonight will also be archived online at the Gay and Lesbian Archives of the Pacific Northwest and available anytime.
If you haven't already and would like to, or if you feel inspired to donate more, we'll drop the link in the chat where you can donate directly to the project. It's like our virtual passing the hat. All donations received tonight will benefit Safe Harbors in Wallowa County,
who we heard from at the top of the show. And this show would not be possible without the generous support of our funders, All Care, the Miller Foundation, the Alliance to Prevent Suicide, through the Oregon Health Authority, and the Josephine County Cultural Coalition. Also, a special thank you to our champion and fiscal sponsor, the Illinois Valley Community Development Organization, who do such good work in our valley.
We're sharing some slides in the live stream with a few resources available for LGBTQ plus and Two-Spirit folks in Wallowa County, as well as some statewide and national resources. We will drop the link to these PDFs in the chat for your reference after the show.
And feel free to reach out to us also after the show if you need these resources, these resource lists sent to you again. You can find our email on our website, or it's boomandbust.info@gmail.com.
Finally, this evening you saw Set A.
Da, 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 da.
And please join us again for another set of 5 different stories and dances, Set B, tomorrow. You can register for that show on the website, or you can just come back to this same link on HowlRound where you're watching the show tonight at the time of the show.
So please join us along with some of the artists from tonight's show and the Wallowa County co-hosts on Zoom for a facilitated community dialogue right now. We are dropping the link to that Zoom in the chat right now, and also you'll see the link in the slides. We are really excited to connect with you about this work and share some ideas and just get to see your faces. We're so grateful you're here.
Thanks for coming to See Out Dance Project. It's such a gift to share this space with you. Take care and have a good night.